Good evening and welcome to World Today. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. This is where we track all important international developments of the day. India's ambassador to China has given an important perspective on the long-term resolution of differences between India and China. Focus on that in the show up ahead. We'll also track all the pandemic-related developments in the worst affected United States. Every American aged 16 years and above is now eligible to get a COVID vaccine. Far from the world battling the pandemic, NASA's miniature robo-helicopter performs a successful takeoff and landing on Mars. All that and more. First, the top stories. India's ambassador to China, Vikram Misri, says tendency to sweep the situation at the border under the carpet and characterize it as just a minor issue and a matter of perspective is inadvisable. Also says this will only take the two countries further away from a sustained solution. White House Press Secretary Jan Psaki says what happens to Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny in Russia's custody is the responsibility of the Russian government and the world will hold them accountable. Kremlin rejects provocative calls for pro-Navalny protests. Allies announce plans for largest protest in modern Russian history. NASA flies a craft on another planet for the first time ever. Scores a Wright brothers moment as it sends miniature robot helicopter Ingenuity buzzing above the surface of Mars for nearly 40 seconds, marking first part controlled flight on an aircraft on another planet. World battles COVID-19. More than 14 crore 28 lakh people worldwide have so far tested positive. Over 12 crore have recovered. The deadly virus has so far claimed over 30 lakh 45,000 lives globally. United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID-19 pandemic. US President Joe Biden declares that every American aged 16 is eligible to get COVID-19 vaccine. Announcement comes weeks after President Biden wrote on Twitter that by April 19th, every adult will be eligible to be vaccinated. In a video message, Biden says COVID-19 vaccine is free and safe. Those were the top stories. Let's now begin with the big news. India's ambassador to China, Vikram Misri, has said the tendency to sweep the situation at the border under carpet and characterize it as just a minor issue and a matter of perspective is inadvisable, as it can take the two countries further away from a sustained solution to present difficulties and deeper into an unfulfilling stalemate. The top Indian envoy said it would be tantamount to running away from the problem and in a direction opposite to that where promises of our closer development partnership lies. Ambassador Misri was speaking at an online event between Indian think tank, Indian Council of World Affairs, ICWA, and Chinese think tank, Chinese People's Institute of Foreign Affairs, that's CPIFA, which was also addressed by Chinese ambassador to India, Sung Wendong, among others. Misri said both India and China agree that they should stick to the consensus between the top leaders of the two countries. However, he pointed out that equally significant is consensus has been reached between the two leaders in the past as well on the importance of maintaining peace and tranquility. It is important to stick to that consensus as well. He further said that impact on public opinion has been particularly strong due to violation of peace and tranquility. At the LSE, in a multipolar world, no country can set the agenda by itself unilaterally without prior agreement and consultation and then expect everyone else to come on board. No single country can expect discussion to focus only on issues of its own interest while ignoring those raised or reflected by others. No country should imagine that it has the sole control over the narrative about a relationship or its actual course. The sooner this is understood, he says, the sooner we can move towards a real and reformed multilateralism. He also remained that in every domain, multilateral plurilateral or bilateral. Words need to be backed up by actions. And two special guests are joining me to take the discussion forward. My colleague Anshuman Mishra is joining us from Beijing in China. Also joining us is special guest Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, former senior diplomat. Warm welcome to you, sir, and welcome Anshuman. Anshuman, if I can quickly get a word from you first, since you're based in Beijing. Given that the world has been busy with the pandemic, if you could just put in context the statement by Ambassador Vikram Misri in the manner he talks about India-China relations.
Suvendu, I think it was a quite straight talk from Ambassador Misri, especially when India and China have been trying for a complete disengagement at borders after the initial disengagement, the first phase of disengagement at the Pangong-Tso area. So after that, there have been around 2 months now. And after the first phase of disengagement, there is nothing moving. I mean, we can't see anything moving on the ground, especially when there have been 2 more rounds of talks also. China has been saying that we want to take forward the relations with India. Both the countries should move ahead based on a consensus between the 2 top leaders. But actually, it has been doing very little, which is effective on the ground, especially more for the disengagement. India has been consistently maintaining that the complete disengagement is the prerequisite to maintain the peace and tranquility at the border, and then only we can move ahead to rebuild the trust and the relations between the 2 countries from where it was left in April 2020 when some serious incidents took place at LEC. So I think this is the very first time, apart from India's external affairs minister, the top envoy of India in China has, without mincing any words, very clearly, he has said that if China wants to move ahead with India in good terms, then its words has to be backed by the action. Just by saying that both the countries are to follow the consensus, and that too, the consensus which China perceives as a consensus is not right, and the consensus to maintain peace and tranquility is also equally important. So I think it's quite important statement from Ambassador Misri.
Right. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, if I can come to you, sir. Given that the statement in question comes from India's ambassador to China, how do you think, how accurate is this assessment of the border situation between the 2 countries by Ambassador Misri?
Every word has been chosen very carefully. The assessment is spot on. And Shubhendu, you will recall that our external affairs minister has also spoken something in a similar refrain.
Yes.
Point really is that here is a situation when aggression has been waged against India, when 35 years or 40 years of confidence building measures have been just torn up, where Indian soldiers have been brutally assaulted. And they want to control the narrative. On the 15th, 16th night at Galwan, the Indian soldiers were attacked. On the 17th evening, 17th, when the 2 external affairs ministers were speaking to each other, the Chinese blamed Indian side. And even today, they continue to maintain the pretense that they have done nothing wrong. So, and the Chinese ambassador keeps talking of meeting each other halfway, which basically means that we have come in, we have violated the LAC, sanctity of LAC, and now, accommodate us. You cannot have that. When we had agreed that we will not let the boundary issue stand in the way of moving further or moving forward, the idea was that the boundary issue is complicated. Let us deal with the complicated issue step by step without putting it on the front burner and having the entire engagement be made contingent on its resolution. Build on the synergies and let the boundary issue be resolved. But far from that, what they are doing is they are trying to not only violate any understanding, but they are trying to encroach Indian territory. So it is the same thing that terror and talks cannot do together. They cannot keep on encroaching or attempting to encroach on Indian territory and expect that we can have business as usual. So that is the message which is going out very clearly, that you have to respect the sanctity of the border. You have to maintain peace and tranquility. You have to be sensitive to each other's concerns, and that is the basis on which the relationship can be restored.
Right. And Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, when you talk about restoring trust between the two sides, the trust deficit that has come in with the violent incidents that took place at the LAC last year, how do you see will that process unfold? Because we're talking about unilateral actions as far as these two countries are concerned as well. So in such a case of trust deficit, where does one make a beginning? Because India has made its point very clear, but what is the route forward for the nations?
I would I have a slightly different take. There is no trust deficit. There is no trust period. Tell me, how can you trust a country which speaks with a forked tongue? While talking peace, they wage conflict. While they sign agreements just to facilitate their agenda. So long as and this not just with India, this is with every country. So long as an understanding or an agreement or a treaty, a CBM furthers their objectives, it is respected. The day it is not, it is ignored. I mean, how can you build trust on that basis?
Right.
And let us remind ourselves that on the 1st of April 2020, when the Chinese side was already very actively preparing for the misadventure along the LAC, there was a very nice letter from President Xi Jinping talking of how India-China relations have progressed, how partnership is very important. So that is the kind of adversary that you are facing. If they can have their way, they will whitewash anything that is not convenient, highlight only their aspect, and expect the other side to fall in line. And that is what Vikram Misri said, that they cannot unilaterally set the agenda or control the narrative. I mean, you can say something 100 times, but cannot expect that to have a ring of truth, because that is not true.
Right.
So relations amongst nations have to be conducted on the basis of mutual respect, on the basis of equality, and on the basis of candor. That is the only way you can proceed further. So yes, China is a very important neighbor. We have always maintained that we want to find a modus vivendi with China. We'll start brick by brick. But as far as trust is concerned, there is no question of trust unless trust is earned. You cannot just say that trust us and move on. I mean, you cannot. That's not acceptable.
Right. Anshuman, if I can come to you for a moment. In a context where we're talking about absence of trust between two neighbors, Ambassador Misri's words also reflect on how it affects the public opinion, public sentiments on both sides as well. Since you're based in Beijing, if you could give us a picture of this ongoing talks and resolution of the border conflicts that is still far away, the manner in which it also shapes public opinion on both sides, and how does that shape the relations between the two countries?
Shubhendu, it's a fact that, as Mr. Misri also said, and we all know, that the relationship between India and China, especially the way it has grown in the past maybe 30 years, it was a conscious choice by both the countries, by leaders from both the countries, to take forward the relations in a particular manner, especially after having a troubled past between the two countries. So now when such kind of incidents take place at the border area, especially when after two informal summits have taken place between two top leaders, so obviously public sentiments will be strongly affected, and some kind of reactions and counter reactions will be there. Of late, after the first phase of India disengagement at Pangong, so what I feel here that the Chinese leadership also has realized to a bit that India is an important neighbor, and they have officially said this thing, that India is an important neighbor, and they want to have good relations. But the million-dollar question still is why China is not moving back to the status quo of April 2020. So unless that is resolved, and what Ambassador Mistry also has said, we cannot move towards the restoration of peace and tranquility, and whatever kind of relations we had, based on whatever level of trust we had, that is the matter to be seen in the coming times, Shubhendu. And especially in China, if I see, there have been little, I mean, some sort of baby step to take forward the things. Yeah, but on the talk of disengagement, there is still some vacillation is there. No clear-cut thoughts are there, Shubhendu.
Right.
So yes, it's hanging in the balance. Yeah.
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, when Ambassador Mistry speaks about the dangers of sweeping India-China issues under the carpet, really ignoring the seriousness of it, do you also see it pointing at the manner in which over the years the two sides had addressed the issues and the tone and the tenor with which the Indian side is now speaking? It seems to indicate that India has sort of finally realized the manner in which to tackle this adversary, if I can use that word.
Well, it's a very tricky adversary, and it is not just us. Very surprisingly, and it is counterintuitive, they have waged aggression against any and everybody, all their neighbors, whether it is Japan, Canada, Australia, USA, Vietnam, Philippines, India. They are even trying to grab the land of Bhutan. So that is the nature of the adversary. Now, not only that, they are in denial. Now, they know exactly what is happening, but the narrative has to be controlled, not so much for the benefit of the outsiders, but for the benefit of the public back home. And you were asking about the public opinion. The public opinion in China is, they are very happy at the way it is being presented to them, that here is mighty China teaching a lesson to any and everybody. So unless they present the facts, unless they realize that you cannot violate norms, rule of law, the agreements, conventions, you cannot continue like this. The thing really is that we have been trying, and from day one, we have been trying to find a way to work with China. What has changed between 1988, when Mr. Rajiv Gandhi went to China and the relations were normalized, and now is the comprehensive national power. Their GDP is 5 times India's GDP. Their per capita income is 4 times India's per capita income, and they have acquired. Chinese Navy is said to have grown at a pace where no navy has grown in human history. So they have developed a military might. They have the economic clout, and they believe that they can get away with anything. They tried these tactics of creeping expansionism in South China Sea and found that nobody opposed them, and that has whetted their appetite. Now, this cannot continue. You cannot say that I set the rules, I will engage in belligerence, that you turn the other cheek. So what India is trying to tell them is that, look, there is a limit to which any country, and that to a major country like India, will have its patience. If we want to have normal relations, and we actually want to have normal relations, then let us talk to each other frankly while addressing each other's concerns. You cannot just have it your way, and that is the. And by the way, that is now the tone that you are hearing from practically every capital. The stock of China has never been as low as now. And I would like here to point out, which is very unusual, the joint statement that has been issued between Prime Minister Suga and President Biden. They had the recent summit, and where they have been upfront to say that the leaders share their concerns over Chinese activities that are inconsistent with international rule-based order. And they have noted that China uses economic and other forms of coercion. And the US has pledged, which is, I have rarely heard such a strong statement publicly, to use all the power that it has, I'm paraphrasing that, including nuclear, to protect the interests of Japan. So that is the kind of situation that it obtains, and there is a global pushback. It is about time that China smells the coffee, because you cannot ride roughshod over any and every country just because you have acquired power and you are flexing your military muscles.
Right, and Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, when you talk about a global pushback as far as China is concerned, how significant is also the manner in which India is also energizing its alliances in the region, particularly if we talk about the Quad, in which 4 important countries come together, including India, for the interest of the Indo-Pacific?
Absolutely. Look at the way the Quad has gained momentum. Between September 2019, when the first foreign ministers meeting was held on the margins of the UNGA in New York, that was September 2019, and we are now in March 2021. That is, in 18 months, you have had 3 ministerial meetings of Quad, and you have had a Quad summit. Now, why is it? It is because every country is concerned at the aggressive behavior of China. It is a kind of an effort by China to cast a new or to frame new rules of engagement, to discard the rule of law and substitute it by the rule of power, and create a China-centric world order where China is at the top of the pecking order and others are at a subordinate position. They are taking seriously the propaganda that China has a mandate from heaven. Now, mandate from heaven cannot be to wage aggression. So, unfortunately, for the last few years, you are seeing an aggressive China, a belligerent China, and that is something that countries will not accept. Countries have realized that there has to be a joint pushback, not to contain China. Nobody wants to contain China.
Right.
Nobody wants to snap relations with China. Every country wants to engage with China, but to restrain China. The effort is to not contain, but restrain China and tell China, Mr. Beijing, this far and no further. You have to be a responsible member of the Committee of Nations. You cannot violate norms and treaties and international conventions.
Right. Anshuman, your thoughts on this for a moment. The manner in which India and the world has been trying to contain the expansionist tendencies of China. What has been the response of the leadership in Beijing, for that matter? How do they see the kind of a multipolar world that the country, that India talks about? How does China see these interventions?
So when the official stand of China on multipolarity is that they very strongly support it. They always say that the rule-based system which should prevail in the world should be a UN-based system. If you talk about any sort of, as you mentioned, expansionist policy, then if someone points a finger at China, maybe at the activities in the South China Sea, or if you talk about Indo-Pacific region, so they will try to justify in a way that they will try to portray that they are not in confrontation with other countries. They in fact will support the right of free movement of all the countries in South China Sea, but they at the same time will try to the regional cooperation should not be used as a small group against China. So China is trying to portray as if the grouping of Quad or the cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region is going against them, and they are taking that pretext to take further action. Shubhendu.
Right, Ambassador Prakash, on that point, where we're talking about the differences between India and China, and also China and other countries in the region, is on the premise of the worldview that these nations carry. You rightly mentioned the kind of hegemonic stance that China takes on different issues, and the manner in which India tries to speak, is vocal about a world order which is multipolar. So when there is such such extreme difference in the manner in which you perceive your position in the world, how do you then work towards solutions, whether it's border solutions or a rule-based order in the region as a whole, when there is such difference in the worldview of how you see the region?
Yes, that is a very pertinent observation. There is a difference becomes even more stark when you look at the posture.
Yes.
You know, it is the posturing of China which makes it look different. I mean, after all, they are smart people. They know the facts. But they want to maintain a certain pretense, a certain narrative. Now, going by that, certainly there is a very big difference. Talking of narratives and the public posture that they engage in July 2020, and I'm speaking from memory, so I could be paraphrasing the Honorable Foreign Minister of China. He was speaking to the American think tanks virtually, and he said that in 5,000 years of Chinese history, it has been a permanently peaceful country with not a one aggressive gene in its system, or no, not one aggressive gene in its DNA. On the 8th of March this year, again, as far as I recall, on the margins of the Chinese CPC Congress, again, Mr. Wang Yi said that India and China are friends and partners, not adversaries. Now, for heaven's sake, if this is what is the behavior of friends and partners, then I rest my case. But, you know, they are past masters in saying things with a flat face, which may or may not have any semblance with truth. Now, you were asking what was the Chinese reaction to the summit, the Quad summit, and I here have a quote from, I have excerpts from the statement or reaction of the spokesperson.
Okay.
And I read a very short. He says, China has always been a builder of world peace and firmly upheld the UN-centered international system based on international law, not the one defined by individual countries to maintain their hegemony. Now, and they accuse certain countries of Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice. Now, they turn everything on its head. I would submit not because they do not know facts. They know facts, but that is very Chinese, because how can you engage with a person who will accuse you of precisely what they have done?
Yes.
That is their negotiation tactics. So what is the way out? And the way out is, hitherto they have gotten away with that. And because they have been getting away with that, it has whetted their appetite to continue on that practice. But now the Committee of Nations is beginning to understand that China will not understand the dialogue or the voice of peace. They will have to be pushed back. They will have to be shown that they will have to be forced to turn the searchlight inwards. So that is what is happening increasingly, given the backlash against China, the unfavorable opinion about China, and organizations like Quad, which as I said, will force China to pause, reflect, and hopefully read it right. Because if they continue on this path, there is no question of maintaining peace and stability. It will only cause further complications.
Right, on that note, thank you very much, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, for joining us in the program and sharing your perspective. Thank you also to you, Anshuman, for joining us from Beijing and sharing your input. And taking cue of the coronavirus update worldwide, more than 14 crore 28 lakh people worldwide have tested positive for COVID-19, while over 12 crore people have recovered from the virus. The deadly infection has so far claimed over 30 lakh 45,000 lives globally. United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID pandemic. So far, more than 3 crore 24 lakh people have tested positive for COVID-19, while over 5,81,000 people have died of the virus in the US alone. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden on Monday declared that every American aged 16 is eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccine. The announcement comes weeks after President Biden wrote on Twitter that by April 19, every adult will be eligible to be vaccinated. At least a dozen states opened eligibility to anyone 16 years and older on last Monday alone, while New Jersey and Oregon announced late last week that all residents 16 years and older will now become eligible on April 19th. President had earlier announced that 90% of adults would be eligible for one of the 3 approved COVID-19 vaccines by April 19th, in addition to having vaccination site within 5 miles of their home. In a video message, President Biden said COVID-19 vaccine is free, safe, and it's how we're going to bring this pandemic to an end.
For months, I've been telling Americans to get vaccinated when it's your turn. Well, it's your turn now. Starting tomorrow, all adults are eligible to get their shot. It's free, it's convenient, and it's the most important thing you can do to protect yourself from COVID-19, including the new variants we're seeing, to protect your loved ones, to help our economy recover, and to help get things back to normal. Look, we're making tremendous progress, but we're still in the race against this virus, and we need to vaccinate tens of millions more Americans.
Let's also meet the Brazilian health workers who trek up into the Rio de Janeiro, often violent Roxina slum to vaccinate the poor against COVID-19. Armed with medical cases carrying vaccines, syringes and sanitizing gel, the vaccination team roams through the shantytown's narrow alleyways to vaccinate the elderly and the most vulnerable. Brazil has become one of the worst hit countries in the world by the pandemic, with some 4,000 people a day dying from COVID-19. The healthcare system is on the verge of collapse. The P1 variant, first discovered in the Amazon city of Manaus, has quickly become dominant in Brazil. It is thought to be a major factor behind a massive second wave of infections that has brought the country's death toll to over 350,000. And Portugal reopened its shopping malls, cinemas, high schools, universities and indoor areas of restaurants, cautiously easing coronavirus restrictions. Cafe owners take a sigh of relief as conditions have begun to normalize and businesses are setting to reopen. Lisbon's Amoreira Mall has more than 200 stores, and its director, Fernando Oliveira, said the impact of restrictions on businesses has been brutal. With a population of just over 10 million, Portugal has suffered a pandemic with 8,31,000 cases and over 16,000 casualties. No crisis in recent history has hit the country's tourism-dependent economy as hard, with the GDP shrinking 7.6% last year. That's the biggest annual slump since 1936. The economic recovery doesn't only depend on the vaccination rollout, which has so far been slow, but also on the return of tourists, especially from one of the country's biggest foreign markets, Britain. Some Swiss restaurants and bars also reopened on Monday for outdoor customers on terraces in latest cautious easing of pandemic restrictions in the Alpine country, while others opted to stay closed, saying it wasn't worth it. Outdoor events are also now allowed, with up to 100 visitors and up to 50 audience members are permitted at indoor venues such as cinemas, theaters and concert halls. In downtown Geneva, locals were enjoying food and drinks on a chilly spring morning after last week's decision by the Swiss federal government. Bars and restaurants have been closed since November in the country. The Palexpo Center, host of the biggest conferences and events in Geneva, opened its door as vaccination center on Monday. The center has the capacity to vaccinate some 2,000 people a day. The figure is expected to rise to 3,000 and 4,000 vaccinations per day. Switzerland has expanded its capacity to inoculate people against COVID-19 by opening mass vaccination centers like the Palexpo in other cities such as Lausanne. In Lausanne, the largest center in the canton of Vaud opened in Palais du Belleau that aims to vaccinate 14,000 people a week. The number of cases has continued to steadily rise in the Alpine country. Over the past weeks, it has increased by at least 4,900 since Friday. Talking about Turkey, hundreds of people formed long queues outside a vaccination center in capital Ankara on Monday evening after Health Ministry expanded vaccine eligibility to people aged 55 years and above. Turkey, with a total population of nearly 84 million, has carried out around 20 million vaccinations, including 11.31 million first doses since January 14th, when it began the nationwide inoculation campaign. Turkey ranks fourth globally in the case of new numbers. Ankara has blamed lax public adherence to rules and virus variants for the surge, and on the March 29th, it announced weekend lockdowns and closed restaurants dining for Ramzan. Moving on, schools of Argentina's capital opened their doors on Monday despite tightened pandemic restrictions that included to go virtual classes to curb COVID-19 infections. Schools of Buenos Aires opened on Monday morning after court overruled a federal order requiring return of virtual classes for a couple of weeks amid a surge in cases that have brought hospitals to a near collapse. The Buenos Aires judge ruled on Sunday in favor of a lawsuit filed by non-governmental parents and some teachers groups in the city demanding a decree that suspended face-to-face classes in the capital region for 15 days be immediately nullified. The decision fuels political tensions between President Alberto Fernandez, who said schools closure was necessary to tame the fast-rising cases in the city, and the opposition-led Buenos Aires government, which has slammed the measure. And emotions ran high on Monday as excited passengers set off on the first flight to take advantage of the quarantine-free travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand, allowing families split by pandemic to finally reunite. The Trans-Tasman route is Australia's busiest international aviation market, with more than 7 million passengers in 1 year ending January 2020, that was before COVID-19 hit. The bubble is expected to help drive economic recovery from the pandemic for both countries, especially in the travel and tourism sector.
Excitement was clearly visible in them, and finally, when the moment arrived, it was all tears and hugs. As the first flight from New Zealand arrived, everyone was eagerly waiting to meet their loved ones following the commencement of the two-way travel bubble between the countries. Emotional scenes were witnessed at the airports, with families reuniting and scores of passengers thronging the international departure terminals at the Australian airports.
16 months! She's my stepdaughter, she's only 12 and her dad doesn't even have any idea that she's here yet. We're surprising him.
No, I did not. I haven't been excited, I haven't looked forward, I haven't planned anything because I just didn't think it was going to happen. But we're here, so.
Been away since November 2019 and both his parents passed away while he was gone, so we haven't seen him for a long time, so we're very excited.
Oh, amazing. It's been nearly 2 years and I haven't seen my partner for that period of time, so it's been very tough. Yeah, really tough.
Though most Australian states have allowed quarantine-free visits from New Zealand residents since late last year, quarantine was mandatory in New Zealand on their return, deterring many from travelling to Australia. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison and New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said in a joint statement that the open border will help drive the economic recovery for both countries and reunite thousands with families and friends. Both Australia and New Zealand had largely closed their borders to non-citizens and permanent residents more than a year ago, helping to keep their COVID-19 numbers relatively low compared with several other developed countries. With Bureau Inputs, World Today Desk, DD India.
A banned Pakistani Islamist group called an end to violent nationwide anti-France protest on Tuesday after the government called a paramilitary vote on whether to expel the French ambassador and halted criminal cases against the group's members. Pakistan outlawed the group Tehreek-e-Labab Pakistan last week after its members blocked main highways, railways and access routes to major cities, assaulting police and burning public property. The group has demanded that Pakistan expels French ambassador in retaliation for publication in France of cartoons depicting Prophet Muhammad. 4 police officers were killed, 11 taken hostage, and more than 800 wounded, many seriously, during the week-long clashes. The Islamists said 3 of their members were killed. The Kremlin on Monday said that it does not want to accept what it called provocative calls for nationwide protest in support of jailed opposition politician Alexei Navalny, whose health has gravely deteriorated while on hunger strike in prison. In a press conference, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said unauthorized rallies in support of Navalny would be considered illegal by authorities. This comes as Navalny's allies have announced plans for what they hope will be the largest protests in modern Russian history on Wednesday. Navalny started refusing food on March 31st in protest at what he said was the refusal of prison authorities to provide him with adequate medical care for acute leg and back pain. The United States has warned Russia it will pay a price if he dies in jail from his hunger strike. And coming out as a warning, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said what happens to Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny in Russia's custody is the responsibility of the Russian government, and the world will hold them accountable. Psaki said in the interim, the objective is continuing to push for his release and reiterate the view that he must be treated humanely.
We continue to reiterate our view that that what happens to Mr. Navalny in the custody of the Russian government is the responsibility of the Russian government, and that they will be held accountable by the international community. In the interim, our objective is, of course, continuing to call for, push for his release, and reiterate our view that he must be treated humanely.
Some other stories now. NASA's miniature robot helicopter Ingenuity performed a successful takeoff and landing on Mars, achieving the first powered control flight by an aircraft over the surface of another planet. The robot rotorcraft was programmed to ascend some 10 feet straight up and then hover and rotate in place over the Martian surface for about half a minute before settling back on its 4 legs. Mission managers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab burst into applause and cheers as the engineering data beamed back from Mars confirmed that the 4-pound solar-powered helicopter had performed its maiden 40-second flight precisely as planned.
April 19th was a historic day for NASA. The small rotorcraft made history, hovering above Jezero crater, demonstrating that powered, controlled flight on another planet is possible.
Well, our team has been working over 6 years, some even longer, towards that dream of experimenting the first ever flight at Mars, and this morning our dream came true. It looks easy. I would like to take this opportunity to remind how difficult it is to fly a rotorcraft at Mars. First and foremost, because the atmosphere there is so thin, right? About 1% compared to that at Earth. That's like on Earth being elevation 3 times the height of Himalayas. So the air is very thin, and Ingenuity had to be really light, small, and has to be able to fly in this thin atmosphere and survive on its own. It did all of that under 4 pounds.
NASA scored a 21st century Wright brothers moment as it sent its miniature robot helicopter Ingenuity buzzing above the surface of Mars for nearly 40 seconds, marking the first powered controlled flight of an aircraft on another planet.
This really is a Wright brothers moment. It's the start of a whole new kind of planetary exploration, and we'll build on Ingenuity's success to see how we can deploy this capability on future Mars missions. We have this evolution of exploring planets in the solar system. First we do a flyby, then we'll do an orbiter mission, then we'll do a lander mission, then we'll land a rover, and now we've added another evolutional capability there, flight on another planet. Ingenuity was a technology demonstration, an experimental mission, but its success is truly remarkable, and it gives us this new capability.
The solar-powered helicopter first became airborne at 12:33 local mean solar time, that is Mars time, a time the Ingenuity team determined would have optimal energy and flight conditions. Altimeter data indicate Ingenuity climbed to its prescribed maximum altitude of 10 feet, that is 3 meters, and maintained a stable hover for 30 seconds. It then descended, touching back down on the surface of Mars after logging a total of 39.1 seconds of flight. Ingenuity was developed as a technology demonstration separate from Perseverance's primary mission to search for traces of ancient microorganisms and collect samples of Martian rock for eventual return to Earth for further analysis. With the helicopter's first outing deemed a success, NASA plans to send the aircraft on several additional, progressively more ambitious flights in the weeks ahead. With Bureau Inputs, World Today Desk, DD India.
What an out-of-the-world achievement, quite literally. Moving on, let's scan through some more news and updates from across the world in News at Glance.
Cuba's ruling Communist Party elected President Miguel Diaz-Canel to succeed Raul Castro as party's first secretary, the most powerful position in the country, on the final day of its Congress on Monday. The succession marks the end of 6 decades of rule by brothers Fidel and Raul Castro, who led Cuba's leftist 1959 revolution. The mantle now passes to a younger generation that worked its way up the party ranks rather than forging itself through guerrilla warfare. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lost an important vote on Monday over who gets to join a powerful committee in parliament, dealing him a setback as he tries to form a new government following an inconclusive election. Netanyahu has about 2 more weeks to try bring together a ruling coalition. Defeat in the vote indicated the veteran leader still has some way to go to secure a majority in the 120-seat Knesset. The vote was to decide who will join the Arrangements Committee, which, in the absence of a new government, controls the legislative agenda. In New Zealand's Auckland, an airport employee has tested positive for COVID-19 after New Zealand and Australia have resumed air travel with bubble facility. Both the countries had closed their borders in March 2020 to non-citizens and permanent residents to contain the pandemic. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that the infected worker, who was fully vaccinated for the virus, had been cleaning airplanes coming from countries with known virus outbreaks. Walter Mondale, a leading liberal democratic voice of the late 20th century who was US President under Jimmy Carter and lost in a landslide to Ronald Reagan in the 1984 presidential election, died on April 19 at the age of 93. Mondale, the first major US party presidential nominee to pick a woman running mate, believed in an activist government and worked for civil rights, school integration, consumer protection and farm and labor interests as a US senator and vice president during Carter's troubled one-term presidency from 1977 to 1981. He also served as US ambassador to Japan from 1993 to 1996 under Bill Clinton. Texas police served search warrants on Tesla as they investigate a fatal crash near Houston over the weekend that left 2 dead. In a tweet, Tesla CEO Elon Musk rejected allegations that the vehicle's driving assistance was to blame. He said company checks ruled out use of Tesla's autopilot system. Authorities found the bodies of 2 men in the car, one in the front passenger seat and the owner of the car in the back seat. Tesla's autopilot system, which was operating in at least 3 Tesla vehicles involved in fatal US crashes since 2016, has come under increasing scrutiny. World Today Desk, DD India.
Let's now look at news from a more intimate world around us, news beyond headlines.
People around the world are wearing masks and maintaining social distancing to win the battle against COVID-19 pandemic. But a man in Belgium's Brussels has taken it to another level. Alain Verskuren, a Belgian artist and social worker, has been strolling through the capital Brussels wearing a portable oasis, which is a plexiglass mini greenhouse which rests on his shoulders, cocooning him in a bubble of air purified by the aromatic plants inside. It not just protects him from the danger out there, but also provides him his share of fresh oxygen. The coronavirus pandemic saw a traditional Swiss annual rite of spring. The burning of the Boyoeg snowman moved to the remote Devil's Bridge in central Switzerland to deter the crowds, the first time it has taken place outside Zurich. Made of wadding and filled with firecrackers, the Boyoeg's fiery end is supposed to signal how much longer the winter will last. The faster its head explodes, the sooner spring will come. With spectators not allowed, a television broadcast showed the decapitation took almost 13 minutes this year, below the average time. What do you do with the $69 million artwork that doesn't physically exist? That's the question faced by Singapore-based investor calling himself Metakovan, who made headlines last month when he bought the digital artwork Every Day's The First 5,000 Days by the American artist Beeple at Christie's. But now Metakovan, whose real name is Vignesh Sundaresan, plans to put the artwork on display in 4 virtual world environments. He's working with architects to design gallery complexes that the public can enter via web browsers or virtual reality technology. In recent times, investment into the virtual real estate has risen drastically. Auction house Christie's has unveiled the highest estimated Asian artwork to ever go under the hammer. A Xu Bihong painting called Slave and Lion is expecting somewhere between $45 to $59 million. The 1924 dated painting by Xu, who is regarded as one of the most important figures of Chinese realism, will go on public preview in Beijing and Shanghai this month before being auctioned in Hong Kong on May 24th. The painting was sold in the global financial hub in 2006 at Christie's for $6.9 million, a record at the time for a Chinese oil painting. A human being and an octopus have formed a unique bond with each other. In a documentary named My Octopus Teacher, South African Craig Foster formed a deep friendship with a wild octopus who becomes his life coach until its death. Foster, in the documentary, rekindles his connection with nature by observing a female mollusk. Forming a deep friendship, she shared her secret life in a stunning kelp forest every day for over a year until her death after mating and laying eggs. Conservationists in Argentina have successfully reintroduced a jaguar family into Iberra National Park as part of efforts to save America's largest feline species. Made up of Brazilian-born mother Juruna and her 2 cubs, Sasqua and Sasso, this is the second jaguar family to be re-wilded in this area. The species has been driven to extinction in this area of Argentina some 70 years ago. So far, 6 jaguars in total have been reintroduced to this national park. According to the conservationists, some 200 to 300 jaguars remain in Argentina. An Andean condor has been released back to the wild in the mountains of Bolivia after it was nursed back to health. The 5-year-old male condor had been in treatment for 3 weeks before flying again. He was found in poor condition by local farmers and turned over to the West Ipacos Nature Park for his rehabilitation. The Andean condor is considered endangered. There are currently an estimated few thousand of the South American birds in the wild today. A pharmacy with a twist opened to the public in London's bustling Mayfair. Instead of being able to purchase medicines and ointments to treat their health issues, visitors to the pharmacy will be able to buy clones of popular chemist items made entirely from felt. The pharmacy is the latest addition to British artist Lucy Sparrow's portfolio of exhibitions made from felt. The shelves of the pharmacy are filled with exact copies of everyday medicines and health products. A felt medical skeleton is displayed near waiting area, chairs of the same material, and you can even shop for new felt makeup and felt perfumes while you visit. The pharmacy contains over 15,000 individual items. Each product is handmade and took the artist approximately 20 minutes to complete. A Japanese author named Aihara Hiroyuki has collaborated with a Vietnamese artist to create a Ehon book titled Friends exclusively for Vietnamese children. Ehon is the Japanese term for picture books. In Vietnam, Ehon is becoming popular not only among children but also among adults. The simple language and colorful illustrations are the special features of this Ehon book, which is gaining a lot of popularity. The book has been written by Japanese author and illustrated by Vietnamese artist Dom Dom. At a park in Japan's Aomori prefecture, cherry blossoms are in full bloom 8 days earlier than the last year. The Hirosaki Park in Hirosaki City is home to about 2,600 cherry trees of around 50 varieties. It is one of Japan's best-known places for appreciating the beauty of cherry blossoms. The city's municipal office announced that the popular Somei Yoshino variety came into full bloom on Monday. The authorities are also planning to start a cherry blossom festival on Friday for the first time in 2 years.
Time now to switch on the time machine and understand the relevance of this day in history.
On April 20, 1912, Bram Stoker, Dublin-born author of Dracula, died. He began writing novels while working as a manager for Irving and secretary and director of London's Lyceum Theatre, beginning with The Snake's Pass in 1890 and Dracula in 1897. On the same day in the year 1943, the massacre of Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising began in World War II. A total of 13,000 Jews died, about half of them were burned alive or suffocated. German casualties were probably fewer than 150, with Stroop reporting 110 casualties. King Christian X of Denmark died on the very same day in the year 1947. He was a member of the House of Glücksburg, a branch of the House of Oldenburg, and the first monarch since King Frederick VII, born into the Danish royal family. On the same day in year 1999, two teenagers went on a rampage at Columbine High School in a suburb of Denver in Colorado. The teenagers shot 13 dead before taking their own lives. On the same day in 2015, bomb attack targeted United Nations compound in Somalia's semi-autonomous Puntland. The militant group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack.
That brings us to the close of this edition of World Today. Take good care of yourself. Namaskar.